again for joining. It's gotten to the point, I have to tell you, for me, where I feel like I'm going to see them again, and this is kind of great. So that is to be a total nerd. That's like the neuroplasticity in our heads, right? So I'm like, yes, and I can feel the week coming, which is actually very cool. So, so if I'm ever afraid of forgetting coming here, not you guys, but coming here, I now have this alarm in my head that says, yeah, this great thing is coming up and it's going to be good to, terrific to share. So in any case, I want to revisit a little bit of our last time together, and what we talked about was kind of creating our own case study. So we'll spend like a small handful of minutes on this. But the question was, I asked you to use DOSE, D-O-S-E, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. I asked you to take a look at DOSE and ask yourself, like, what were you hoping for in a particular incident or situation? And what happened when you started to act deliberately and think about this DOSE acronym? Were you able to change things, or what happened for you? So it's kind of a wide open question. Did anybody do this? And if you did, what happened?
So I'll go first. So
Okay.
for me, Allison, thank you for being here. I just live, I guess I live like this anyway, and I don't need to do these things, but I live that way anyway, is what I'm saying. So I'm sorry to be repeating, but I get satisfaction when I help people. The oxytocin for the love drug, cuddle, bonding, releasing during birth, like all that stuff. I just, like when I see people, like talk to Robert, like I just get like positive vibes, and I try to send that off the same way. The serotonin, well, I know I'm going to pass serotonin, but my endorphins, when I exercise or when I see people and everyone's happy and cheerful, like it just, like attitudes are contagious, and I know mine is contagious and it's worth catching.
Right. Okay, but that's great. And right. And there's something kind of contagious about it in a way. You're absolutely right. And somehow it just opens up, I want to call them doors, though they're not necessarily doors, but it just opens things up, because what happens is we're not so restricted. And it really, Randy, that's, I think, what you're really probably talking about to some degree. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? Don't worry, I won't give you an F.
I can't do as well as Randy did, but I think
you'll do better.
There you go.
Let's see. So I think I see what you did. So I think like the overall, just being aware of it is a big game changer.
And I think you just did as well as anybody could possibly do, because that's the whole idea. Did you see what I did? So, but yeah, I mean, I think that it's, if you're aware of something, you can use it because it's a little more present. When you take stuff and you kind of put it away, it's harder to retrieve it, especially if it's like if you're in the moment, it's harder. So, let's say you're, on a call with, I don't know, some customer service thing, and you're just ready to just fall apart. However you do that, to stop and think about these things, it kind of helps you to check in. And then it's actionable. So you can use this in the office when you're ready to you can't believe that person did that thing. All you have to do is like DOSE, just check in. And all of a sudden, it happens so quickly. And you don't have to do anything pretty much beyond that most of the time. I mean, sometimes you have to find your boundaries and not choke the person, because that's bad for the workplace. But, you want to just stop and have something to check in with. It's like people have those affirming posters. And for a while, that was a big thing, right? You go into some office place and there's some guy jumping from one peak to the next apex and whatever, and the language. That's all that is. It's just a quick visual reminder of something to help you rise to a better space. So it's internal, and it's you literally messing with your own brain to create better control. So your outcomes are better. Does anybody else have anything on this?
I'm going to just say something. It's funny how you say customer service people. So like Robert and I have a pet peeve that we're dealing with people at customer service. There is no customer service. Like I heard of the story today that someone was supposed to go to someone's house the last 2 days, and they never call. And then the person whose house they were supposed to go to calls up and says, so where were you? Oh, we realized we forgot to call. So then you realize you forgot to call. So what are you doing? Like, where people aren't present, they're not
Right.
present. And then for the nerve to say, oh, we realized we forgot to call you back because we were too busy. But like, I'm calling you. So be apologetic. Not that you want to make anyone right or wrong, but like, just be apologetic. And the way the world is today, it's just crazy. And people are just not, they need to have dose.
You're right. We're gonna just micro dosing, which is a
Right.
dose anybody, exactly. But look, you're not wrong. Things have changed over the last decade or so in particular. Really, it's changed significantly, especially in places like customer service. We should just do a discussion about that. Maybe I'll do that. That sounds like a good thing, because that's a big issue, like retention and customer service. You got it. I'll do it. All right. But yeah, but it's a big thing. Look, I had, just to make you laugh, like we had a guy who was supposed to come do some work at the house. He showed up exactly 6 months to the day later with a screwdriver in his hand at my front door. I'm like, how much crack are you smoking? You need to go away. That's what I said. Probably not the best thing, but that's what I said. I couldn't believe it. It was literally 6 months, as if no time had gone by for him. And with the screwdriver like this, or like, so you got to go. And I didn't even need an apology. I just like, call me first, but don't just weirdly show up. Very strange, but you're right. So this is a forever thing, but lately, in the last a little over a decade, things have really slid downhill. And I think part of it is people are not as present as they used to be, which leads us to this discussion, Randy. Thank you. So Pam, right? Pam, Robert, Kim, anything else? Or we're
Yeah,
good?
I just wanted to share. So one of the things that I've tried to do throughout my life and continue to have to remind myself, and I don't know if this isn't necessarily dose or not, but like yesterday when Lane, I don't know if everyone saw the email that Lane sent out about Jen and her health issues all of a sudden, and I've got some crap going on here at work. And all of a sudden, that was nothing. That was all the garbage that I'm dealing with at work, and this owner that we have that just is set back in 1972. It was nothing. It was nothing. Because you know what? I'm healthy. My kids are healthy. I have a roof over my head. And yeah. And so that helped me reset myself, and then dealing with this owner that I'm going to have to deal with in the next week or so, which I don't want to deal with him, but I've got to. And it's just like, you know what? Not that the issues that I'm got to talk to him about aren't important and may or may not impact my life and my livelihood, but I can manage it. It's fine. I'm in control of it to a certain extent. And that gave me a sense of just control. I'm not even going to say power, but control.
Right, but look, I mean, dose, it still works, because what you're really talking about is brain chemistry. When you heard that or read that, you took a step back and you looked at a bigger picture. And looking at the bigger picture, your brain went to, I have this, this is good. There was that time it was really good, because now your brain is reeling into a different direction. Those chemicals in your brain and those connections that are occurring, that's exactly why we talked about that whole dose process, because all it is just take a second. Just take a second. The whole take a breath thing. The take a breath thing is it certainly oxygenates your body, et cetera, but it gives you the second to ground yourself, to back off, and to see something that's a little different. You don't get sucked into the moment. You get to take a break. And that's what that take a breath off really, it's a big part of that. So yeah. And but that's a good example, by the way. And your perspective is healthier because of that. That's good. All right. So we're going to dive into this other piece. And this other piece this has to do with the effects of negativity and how to change that, and also how to use it. So there's a tendency, especially in the way that, the mental health business is big and the self-help business is so big and everybody's like doing all this stuff. and you've got vlogs and blogs and videos and things, and a lot of it is focused on like how to do better and whatever. There's a tendency to look at all the positive, but we really don't like to talk about the negative because the perception is that it's going to drag you backward. All right. So I've said this to you, I believe in the past, I am big on strength-based assessments. That's a very positive space, but it has obstacles in it. But there's a time where you have to stop and go, let's talk about what negativity actually does, because if you can't understand it, it's very hard to find balance to operationalize all of this other material, like positivity and how to make things happen better, so on and so forth. So when I was writing this, I started to think, and I want to say this first, and we're going to really get to the meat of this piece a little bit at the end, but choose your habits carefully. Most of what we do, we're in charge of. We really are. So a lot of the habits that we have, we're making these choices. We don't just wake up with a habit. Just wake up. All right. I'm going to talk about habit development, how to break it at the end. Okay. And then I'm going to do like a part B of today next time. So I'm giving you kind of this foundational piece. And then next time we'll talk about this more. All right. So just keep in mind, be deliberate and please choose your habits carefully. But let's first talk about negativity. All right. I want you to think about this. Feel free to just break in at any point with whatever thoughts you're having. We are regularly bombarded with negative information. Like it's constant. It's pretty much, it's not constant, but it's consistent. Wars, food insecurity, poverty, climate change, other forms of upset, personal things in your house, things in the office, things you wish you could change about yourself, things you wish you could change in other people. Like there's all of this stuff, but it's a barrage of information. Okay. And your brain, its job is to interpret, for the much of it is to interpret information. So we're busy interpreting things all of the time. So if you go to one place and somebody at the next table, let's say you're eating alone and somebody at the next table is talking about, oh my God, and Ukraine and all this, look, this is important. But there's that, your head took that in. Now you go somewhere else and somebody's like, oh my God, there are people right here in this country who don't have food. Why are we giving money away or whatever it is that they have to say? Now you're thinking about, oh my God, okay, even if it's not a heavy burden for you, you're taking it in. So every single thing that you experience, whether it's your experience or secondarily through somebody else, something you hear, something you see, you're taking that information in and it is sitting in your head. And again, it's not all sitting front and center. Like Randy said, everything's not present, but it's there. It's there. All right. So you have all of these things. Now, this is part of our lives. The wars that are existing now, this is not a new thing. Okay. I am going to risk saying that most of us have been alive for other wars in other places. And we've seen food insecurity, although we called it other things in this country or elsewhere. And we've seen other types of poverty. We've seen this over and over and over. But there are a couple of things that compound this, which is the pandemic. Now, are we the first to see a pandemic? The answer is no. Okay, will we be the last? The answer is probably no. However, that added more to this, and we have social media. So it wasn't like you were just locked in your house, okay, and you had to stand by the window to watch to see what was happening. All right, it's a constant barrage of the interchange of information. Okay, whatever social media you use, the news. I mean, we've got cable stations, we've got all these things. People are streaming things, right? You have all of this information. So even with the pandemic, you're managing a tremendous amount of information. And the other piece is that going through that, being separated and all of that has had a very interesting, unfortunate, but interesting effect. As unifying as the pandemic was, which was part of the upside, people couldn't wait to get back together. Like I remember one of my patients said to me, he's in his late 20s, and he said, as soon as the gateways opened up, he ran to New York City like so many other people. And he said, oh my God, it was like St. Patrick's Day. Like every time I go, it's like St. Patrick's Day. It's ear to ear people. It's joy. It's drunkenness. It's fabulous. People are laughing and hugging. They don't even know each other. And he was so happy. And I'm not saying go out and get drunk because that's the only way to do it, but the unity, the unification that occurred when people were able to get back out, glad to be in the office, even if you didn't like those people before, they were not your favorite. So nice to just have them somewhere nearby most of the time. All right, unification. However, it's left a bit of a trail, like a, I don't know, slug, if you will. It's a slow trail. And what's happened is people are overwhelmed, easily overwhelmed, where perhaps they were not before. They feel disconnected. Okay, so even though they're with people, there's a disconnect. All right. There's a lot of brain fog, minimized focus. Okay, these things are not just affecting people in their personal life, it's in the workplace. And the workplace, let's push that into kind of that seamless space of you know, going into a store. I mean, it's like, it's the most difficult thing sometimes to just get through a store where people used to know where things were, or they were a little up, or they had like, hey, welcome to this, or whatever. Yes, we have that, or no, I'm sorry, we don't have that. They're like, they're staring at you. You can like, literally, I asked somebody for a doorstop yesterday. True story. I'm like, hi, do you have a doorstop? We need like a stupid door, like a doorstop. And she's looking at me and she went, oh yes, we have them. It was like a zombie apocalypse precursor kind of a thing. I was like, I'm following this woman through the store. And she took me to like the place where there were like drawer handles and things and brass. And I'm like, no, like a doorstop. And she couldn't wrap her head around this. So she asked somebody else, okay, it's not that she's stupid, is that she's not fully present. And it was just one more example of the fact that people, there's a disconnect. Why? Because in 2 years, our brains learned something new, which was we're not connected. So as connected as we felt, there was a lot of disconnectedness. All right. People are easily overwhelmed. Why? Because the world became slower. We developed our pace. We did things pretty much on our terms, given the constructs of a pandemic. People worked with their kids differently. People approached their jobs differently. I had two different men say to me, I don't need to do that much traveling, and I'm not doing it anymore. And you know what? I'm not going back to the office. At the end. And now that we're out and the gateways have opened to do whatever, you know what they're not doing? They're not traveling anymore. And one guy decided to retire early. He worked it out so that he could retire a little earlier. Okay, these are very successful businessmen. People decided I can do things better on my terms. Why do I need all of this stress? But in doing that, when you have a lot happening, then all of a sudden, or the world is really churning, it's overwhelming. Even if the churning is not like in hyperdrive and it's just normal like it was before, it's too much. I can't tell you how many people have said to me that going to like a grocery store or a mall is the last place they want to be. It's too much because they've spent a year and a half, 2 years in a place where there wasn't that much motion. There weren't that many shapes. There wasn't that much color. And I know that may sound kind of trite, but our brain is interpreting what it's experiencing. So suddenly the shapes, the colors, the sounds, the movement, it's a lot when we've been kind of sitting in a different, more, I don't know, staid position. No matter how busy people were, they're still experiencing this. It's very interesting. Okay, so yes.
I just want to share.
Sure.
I also think that it's particularly, for at least me who lives in New York City, I don't have to do, I spent so many years doing, going to museums and theater and, all of that. And wow, I've learned the joy of just sitting and reading a book. Sitting in my backyard, reading a book on a nice summer afternoon is heaven. And for me anyway, it recalibrated things. Not that I don't like to go and see theater and music and, go to the mall and all of that, but I don't have to. And I think before I felt I was driven to, or I personally said, oh, as a good New Yorker, I've got to go, go, go. But I don't have to.
Right, because the expectations have changed.
Yeah, yeah. And I
Right.
think I've changed. My expectations of me and my
Right.
behavior has changed. And it's really okay to sit and read a book and yeah, and hang out with, with my adult kids and my husband and yeah.
Right, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. So all of a sudden, it's not so much that the world, the exterior world for us has changed. It's the world is going back for the most part to where it was, at least trying. Right. So the museums are open, things are open, there are things to do. But we've changed as a population, we've changed as a global community, we've changed. It's not just Americans, it's like people all over the place are reporting the same thing. So, Pam, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's just an incredible shift. Randy.
Yeah, so we've definitely, we've definitely changed as a culture also. So like, it's funny how Pam said the theater. So 2 Saturdays ago, like I went to see the Neil Diamond show and it was packed, right? I mean, packed. It was a great show, but packed. But the consideration of some people, listen, you go into a show, people understand it's tight quarters, there are a lot of people that are still, and I'm only 65 years young, and I'm still like, I think young, I didn't grow up yet. And, like for me, I just like, people should just be more caring. People are just like, they're inconsiderate. Like, it's just, even driving, like I driving people are nuts, like you saw what happened yesterday. Like you talk about the news, you saw that thing in Brooklyn, like a white truck ran through a red light. I mean, I don't want to bring negative in here, but like people
No,
were
that's what we're
killed.
doing today.
People were killed because this idiot ran on 18th Avenue in Brooklyn. Two people were killed. The driver was taken away and was arrested, but like they were in 18th Avenue, I guess, like in the Hasidic section of Brooklyn over there. And the truck, I mean, like speeding through the red light, hits a car at the intersection, but this guy's car, he goes on the sidewalk and injures or kills people walking. And it was a bus stop. So there could have been a lot more people. It's just
Sure.
that the crassness of people and the attitudes. And so here, you could hear it that I'm getting mad because it's annoying how people don't care about people. And here,
Right.
even coming home Saturday night over the Kosciuszko Bridge at like 1 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning, I tell you, if there was this much space between the car in front of me and my car, a BMW went between us. And like, where are you going? Like at this hour? So what happens is they'll create an accident and they're gone. And other people have gotten hurt.
Right.
Like, I wish I had a camera, and that's where I wish I was a cop, because these people would be arrested, like.
No, but you're
citizens
not
arrested.
wrong. So these things have been happening forever, but I think that also we've become a little more acutely aware of what's happening around us when, like Pam said, we've recalibrated. All of a sudden, you don't have everybody that's in a rush so much anymore. I mean, you still do, but not, the volume is different. So truly, as a society, we've made significant cultural changes. So Randy, like you're right. You're really right. It's, I don't know. It's not good.
People don't care. And
Well,
the
some people don't.
entitlement, oh, I'm entitled to this, I'm gonna do this, or I'm
Yeah.
gonna park here and I'm gonna block you. Yeah, someone in Robert, when you were away in Florida last week, in Woodside, this family, they constantly argue about a parking spot and they're neighbors, and one person stabbed the guy. I mean, it's just incredible what's on the news.
It's
And
not
they've
good.
had previous, fights. Whatever. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry I
It's
brought that
okay.
up.
I'm going to reroute you to my, I teach criminal justice and homeland security courses at St. John's University. I'm going to reroute you. So we need your conversations right there. But look, what you're really talking about is the lack of presence, a certain lack of connectivity. When people feel connected to each other, they don't do that. They don't do that. Something has happened over time. And again, it's not specific to the pandemic, but that kind of, I want to say, lurched it literally forward into this other space. So let's dive into what negative thinking actually does, because we talk a lot about, or people talk a lot about, like I said, what, dopamine does and all this great stuff. Let's talk about what negativity does, because I really want you to understand this. All right. So negativity, what it does is, think about this. It creates stress, or it's stress related. Stress, and this is chemical and physical. Stress inflames stress. Literally, it's so simple. Stress inflames stress. All right. So you have cortisol. Cortisol in your body is a stress hormone. That's what it is. Okay. So stress, let's say you experience some type of stress. All right. Stress causes an increase of cortisol, which then leads to more stress because it's increasing your physical stress. So you have these emotional reactions. You have a physiological reaction because you have experienced you're taking in some information, having an experience that's stressful, like Randy talking about being on the bridge, having a stressful thing, then your body goes, and it's cortisol. Your cortisol increases, creating more stress. It's cyclic. So stress creates stress. Yeah, Stephen.
What is cortisol?
It's the stress hormone in your body.
All right, so you get triggered and that releases the cortisol.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right. The other thing that negative thinking does is it diminishes the brain's ability to think clearly. Okay. And I know that sounds so obvious, but I want to really show you how far this can go. All right. So it diminishes the brain's ability to think clearly. What that does is that lack of clarity, your reasoning decreases and your ability to form memories also decreases. That's why when you're stressed, not that any of you are ever stressed, but if that happened, all of a sudden you're like, what's that word? What's their name? Where's my key? Forget my keys. Where's my car? Like all of a sudden, things that you just know, it's gone. Why? Because your capacity in that area is diminished. Okay. Cynical thinking. Again, negative thing, anything negative. Okay. Studies have shown that that type of thinking increases the risk of dementia. So we've just gone from stress, a heightened level of cortisol, more stress. Now you can't think. Your brain is taking this in, it's processing it. And when you get into the cynical thinking is interesting because it's like sharper, it's a little sharper, like it's a little more, tuned in. They're doing this to me, whatever it is, that I'm always the bad person, whatever it is. Cynical thinking, studies have shown that leads to, that can lead to dementia. It increases it. It's not an absolute. Let's not make it absolute. Okay. Negative thinking decreases cognitive functioning. So your cognitive functioning decreases. So what happens is you're going through all of this stress. And the question is, well, if I have this, why would I continue to do this? That sounds kind of insane, right? I can't remember when I'm stressed. Everybody in here knows that that's a fact, right? Why do we keep doing it? Because there are things that happen in between that we feel good about. So it's like somebody will say, you know what? When I'm really stressed, I eat. When I'm really stressed, I drive fast. The rush from driving fast makes you feel better. So what happens is, even though you're going through kind of this negative space, there's a part of your brain going, yeah, but remember like when we drive like really fast, like so much fun. And you're like, yeah, it's like being 17. And your brain is going through these things. And the next thing you know, you're doing something negative because your brain, it's like addiction. Your brain is, let me set you up so we can go do that fun thing again. Right? So your head, it's not just these compartments, things are working together. So this discussion is built so that you can find out what really is happening and make those changes. You want to be more successful? Here's your material in part, but it's a big piece. All right. So if you don't mind going down this little rabbit hole with me, it would be very helpful. I've mentioned this, I think, last time, your limbic system. All right. Limbic, L-I-M-B-I-C system. This is what I call the survival center. All right. This is where you have these emotions and behaviors, but they're kind of like gut level survivor kind of mechanisms or thoughts or feelings. This area, the limbic system, is buried deep inside of your brain. Okay. It's behind the cerebral cortex. So it's behind all of this, and it's above the brainstem. So this is kind of buried deeply. Right. So when people say that response came from my gut, or I'm like, a father bear or whatever it is when you threaten my family, the limbic system, it's activated. And now it's all about survival. All right. So that's what your limbic system is about. So that's a thing that speaks to you, if you will, or causes you to emote or behave with regard to like caring for, people that you love, or, really being protective of certain things like your passions. Safety is another issue. All right. This limbic system interacts with a lot of things, but there are two important spaces that it really works with. All right. One is your hippocampus. All right. Just to make this simple, it's the thing that looks like a curvy seahorse. When you see like the pictures of the thing that looks like a walnut, and that's your brain, like from an MRI, there's like those little curvy things. That's what that is. All right. Look at me, just completely destroying all the beautiful science that exists. Right. But the hippocampus, amongst other things, this is where there are associative memories. Okay. This is where these things happen. So associative memories, you have a memory that's associated to something. All right. You smell something. Like my mother one day was driving her car, and all of a sudden she remembered the windows were down, and she remembered her mother's cooking was very bad. This is a true story, really bad. And then she looked up and she was behind a garbage truck. That's an associative memory. Great story, right? The person you never want to have cook for you. All right. This is a place where there's special orientation. All right. Your brain sets you up so that you can make certain things happen. It helps you to navigate the world, basically, the hippocampus. It just helps you to get around. That associative memory system is important because it tells you if something's safe. It tells you if something's enjoyable. It's like, well, I've never tried that before, but that looks like this, so maybe I could do that. Or, these people make me uncomfortable, because I remember being in a circumstance where I was with similar people and it didn't work out so well. So literally, this system helps you to navigate the world. All right. Other thing, there's something called neurogenesis inside of the hippocampus. You also have new neurons that are created by adult stem cells. So these are things that are grown already. It's telling you that things are generated still. So when you're growing up, you're not stuck. So when somebody says, oh, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, yeah, you sure can. It takes longer. Maybe the motivation will be different, but you sure can. Until your brain is done, you're not done. All right. The other piece that the limbic system really interacts with is the amygdala. All right. So you also have new neurons that are created within the amygdala. All right. And it's got a left and right side, just like the hippocampus, which I didn't tell you has like two parts to it. All right. This is central to emotions. So I want you to think we're really emotional beings. We're really reactive. And this is why you're set up to do this. Okay. Some people more than others, but everybody's carrying this equipment and it's operating, I hope. All right. This is the area that attaches emotions to memories. Okay. So this is where you have a memory and all of a sudden you're not okay. So right now we hear a lot about trauma. Everybody seems to have trauma, which is not accurate, but in any case. All right. So, but you can go through something. Let's say there's an item that you've received from something and it makes you nauseous every time you think about it. Just like that. You're fine. You're nauseous. Then you're fine. That's the work of the amygdala. All right. That's part of the outcome of its process. All right. In here, you also form new memories. Now here's the fascinating part. Not only are you forming new memories here, but a lot of them have to do with fear. This is the rabbit hole part. So when we're talking about, oh, memories are great. Actually, this piece of your brain, okay, is also forming new memories that are related to some kind of fear. All right. So this could be attuned with, in line with trauma, but it doesn't have to be trauma itself. All right. Here's,
So
yeah.
so
Forward.
why would it do that? Is that a protective thing?
Yep, because it goes back to the limbic system, right? So that the limbic system is we have to be safe. And your memory is like, oh, let me connect this. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's based, now it's fear-based. So absolutely. Right. Here's the big news. All right. Fearful memories. This is really interesting. Fearful memories are able to be formed in only a few repetitions. I want you to think about this for a minute. It's faster for you to adhere to something fearful, much faster than it is for you to possibly do something that's positive. You know that thing where it just hits you and you're like, oh my God. And all of a sudden you can feel it. It's like you'll never do that again, or you're going to change.
Wow, that's really powerful.
It's incredible. That's why I talk about the brain, because like now you know. The bigger question to me is, what do you want to do with it? But now you know. It only takes a few times. So think about all the times you've gone to do something, whatever it is, that would have been positive for you, really beneficial. Well, why can fear change you like that? And you have to keep going and going back and going back. What is that? So I want you to know that like fear, this is a huge driver. It's a huge driver. So I want to talk about the workplace with this. And I know that I'm not the only person in this room who's heard something like this. The fear of the repercussions related to ageism are horrifying to people. They go into an industry, they work their way through their career. You see this a lot in corporate, right? You're doing well, you're rising, you're a phoenix, it's happening. And all of a sudden, this is interesting. You're in your mid to late 40s and you're like, I can't let anybody know how old I am. I've seen it. People dress younger. They do things they're not really inclined to do, but they do it because they want to be a part of the thing. And they want people to perceive that they are youthful enough to stay in this space. And what they're doing is they're kind of playing with, house money, if you will, at that point, whatever that is. They're trying to get through because they're afraid. And the question is, where does that come from? Well, now you know. It's not like somebody said it 10, 15 times. They could have heard it once and go, oh my God, I can lose my job. They can come up with a reason to push me out. Not because I don't produce, but because I'm too old. And you only have to hear it one time. And all of a sudden, you're changing the way you dress. You're changing who you hang out with. You're changing the stories that you tell. You're changing, you know what? You're ready to pack it in by 5, 6 o'clock, and now you're there till 9 because you need to do it. That is all coming out of your brain and fear. Because you're not in control of like the greater powers. So the question is like, what do I do? Now you're responding out of fear. Some self-love because you want to keep your job and your lifestyle or whatever, but right? All right. So there's something called fear learning, which is really interesting. Fear learning, and it's learning from fear. Just boil that down really quickly, all right? It's learning from fear, all right? And what fear learning has, it has 3 things that I want you to know about. The first one is memory. So fear learning happens through memory. Okay, memory formation very specifically. So you start to form memories, all right, during fear learning. The other thing is consolidation. All of a sudden you take all of this information and you bring it in and you have this consolidated mass, if you will, of information that's related to fear. And the third thing that happens is recall. So you formed these memories, you're consolidating this information, and now you're recalling these things. And it keeps you in a loop and you're learning. And that's what fear learning basically is. All right. We're driven by this stuff. Chemically, we're driven by this stuff, but it doesn't mean that you can't counteract that. You can. But you can't counteract what you don't know. So that's why I felt like this was important to share with everybody. So that limbic system of ours, all right, what it does basically, now that you know that it's kind of interacting with all of these other things, it takes over the prefrontal cortex. It literally it's like high alert, red alarm, number one, everything's hot. It takes over all of that other reasoning and all of those great feelings and things. Takes over. And here's another big piece of news. It diverts the energy that you would use to feel good or whatever's happening in your head that's nice. it sucks all of that energy away because the limbic system is like in full force. It's like going to the beach, it's calm, it's lovely, and all of a sudden this huge wave comes in and like eats up half of the whatever on the beach. Goodbye. All right. How did that happen? There's energy that's been building up in the water that could cause that thrust that's that powerful that it could actually drag stuff right like down on chairs, whatever, off the beach. It doesn't just happen. It takes a while. So like fear does the same thing. Okay. It hits hard, it clicks fast, but all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're like, why can't I think straight? It's because your stress is building. Why can't I think straight? Because everything's so negative in my head. I can't escape it. And then it just takes over and it kind of washes a lot of the good stuff away. Hopefully it's temporary. The more you entertain that stuff, this is neuroplasticity. There's strength. Let's say these are the neural endings, right? Let's call them endings. And now they are together and they're creating thoughts and feelings and responses and behaviors and physical reactions. The longer these stay connected and these signals go back and forth between these connections, the stronger that becomes. It becomes very strong and very flexible. And that is also why it's harder to break a lot of your behaviors. All right, everybody good? Yes, Stephen.
I had to mute. I got the strong part. That makes sense. Why is it more flexible now?
Because what happens is it's kind of like the longer it stays together, so it's not just going to like be weak and kind of just like be flimsy.
Okay.
It's strong and flexible, like a good muscle. You know, like people go work out, and if they work out, let's say they're working their arms out, but they're not working like a lot of other things out. Now they have like these big arms. But if you don't work on your flexibility, you're just going to walk around looking like you're stuck in space with your arms. So you want those things to be flexible because that actually makes you stronger. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I give you the right answer. But that's what happens in your brain. So the longer you entertain something, the stronger these become, but they're also flexible. So they can do more. They have lasting power. They can't just fall apart. Makes sense now. Probably better.
Mhm.
All right. Thanks.
I'm thinking like a cable bridge, something like
Okay.
that.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. So like a cable bridge. Thank you. That was better than my arm thing. Good. Thank you very much. All right. So when the limbic system takes over, ready for what happens, you can't think. Your cognitive functioning, like I said, decreases. Now you can't even think. It's really hard to think when everything is about like this stress. This can happen. It doesn't have to be a dire circumstance. You could be going to make a presentation at work, pitching to a new client, fixing something that's, not been really great. You're building up your stress because there's a fear factor in there that they're not going to like what you do. So you've got that fear factor. All of this is happening in your brain. And somebody comes in, they're like, hey, remember that? And you're like, look, I can't, can we not do that right now? You can't even think. All you've got is the thing that you can focus on, and that's about it. Yes,
It makes, it rings a lot of bells for me with why so often once people are put on like a performance improvement plan, they fail because it's just like, oh, I'm doing all these things wrong and I'm so bad that you've got to put me on a plan now. And it's like you've boxed yourself into a corner. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know, how do you help those, folks who are, who need a hand, but
put things in that aren't fear-based. You're giving
yeah,
somebody a checklist. Okay, here's what we see wrong. That's great. You can't fix, like I said, you can't fix what you don't know. So that's
yeah,
terrific.
yeah,
What do you put in there? That's why rewards work. Because then it's like, oh, I can, I've got this thing, I can do this, or, oh, I did that. That was awesome that happened. Or thank you for recognizing me. And it's like reminiscent for me of like the manager, the director, whatever, or president who they only talk to you when something's wrong, but they never talk to you when something's right.
yeah.
Right. So it's a different.
Right. We're always afraid, right? It's the manager calls us in. We're like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. What did I do wrong?
Right. But what would happen if you called up and said, hey, I just want you to know what you did was great. And that's it. That would be a game changer, especially with performance reviews. If you really want to retain the employee, you should put them in a position where they can succeed.
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, you spend your energy now waiting, because this is all negative now, just waiting
Yep.
for them to screw up. Because your win is when you get to fire them or whatever it is that your win is. But you have to go through all that stuff. Wouldn't it be
Yeah.
better if you could get them to succeed? Now everybody feels better, right? Yeah, Robert. Hi.
Hi. So just trying to think this all and how it pertains to me in business and life.
Yes.
So the negativity fuels the stress, right? The cortisol. So I guess are related to health. So from a health standpoint, my cardiologist, when I had a health issue, told me, yes, cholesterol is bad, overweight is bad, smoking is bad, poor diet, lack of exercise. But the one thing that is the worst thing in your body and that you can't really manage or you need to manage is stress. So the cortisol is not a positive thing. Obviously meditation, exercise, a better mindset, programming your mind. But I've been struggling, and for most of my life, I was raised by a yeller. I was raised by an angry, mean man. And that's what I learned. You repeat the habit. So I'm trying to break the cycle. But in business also, like, what benefit is to put somebody down, to yell at somebody, to be negative, and to raise yourself up by stepping on down on somebody else. We've all experienced those people, from a boss, from an owner, from a business standpoint, and even from a personal standpoint. So I guess my round question is, what do you find best to manage that cortisol? And is there any secret sauce that you have to lower those levels?
Let me tell you that most of what I speak about, I've tried on myself, like I'm some kind of crazed guinea pig. It's been almost ridiculous. I find, as a visual person, okay, and you have to look at who you are. Things don't work if it doesn't work for you. For me, like that thermometer, like the United Way thermometer, we're meeting our goal. In that way, more like some kind of a receptacle, some kind of a jar, okay? I think, is my cortisol, like, if this is where it should be, maybe it's around, it's not like not there. If it's here, is it increasing? And I see it in my head almost like a fluid, like it's a liquid. So if I have stress, what I'm seeing, and I don't mean like I stop and I'm doing this, there's no stopping. I'm in the middle of I'm like in the throes of whatever. And I'm like, am I like raising that? Is that like increasing? But I take it from words, because our brain thinks in pictures, by the way. It doesn't think in, like, if I say dog, you don't have it doesn't say DOG, and that's not what you see. You see a picture of whatever you think a dog looks like quickly. So that's why I was like, well, if I look at my cortisol issues as something that really can ebb and flow or go up and down, for me, up and down works, I can catch it faster. And then I can say, okay, what do I do to decrease my stress? And I've got a lot of different things that I do, with other people, my practice, but also, or when I'm speaking or consulting, whatever, or with myself. And one of those quick things, and I'll just throw this in, is there's something that I created called That's Not Mine. And it's stopping and taking a look when you're in the middle of something, or somebody's, when you're practicing the conversations in your head and it's just really upsetting to you. Stop and ask yourself, how much of that do I control? Really, how much of that do I control? And if you can understand that you probably only control a little bit or not much, it's not yours. So you're controlling something that doesn't even belong to you. Like, what are you doing? So when you can stop, and normally you'd get sucked in and you're like, that's not, what? The guy driving on the bridge, what belonged to Randy was his car and how he drove. That's the end. So that driver, that's not mine.
And my wife and I's safety.
Right. Right. So you move your car over, you do whatever you have to do to get out of harm's way to the best of your ability, but the rest has nothing to do with you. Literally nothing. So, Robert, it's whatever is stressing you out or whatever sucks you in, just stop and ask yourself, how much of that really belongs to me? Like, really, how much ownership do you have? And the rest of it's not yours.
Well, exactly what you said, like at that moment, like, oh, let me stop. Like, we don't have that luxury of, you're in a conversation and it turns into an argument or,
Right.
A disagreement. or the road rage, let me take a breath. Let me, namaste. Let me go back and say, it's unrealistic. But what I've thought about and has come up, and I'm going to try to adapt it more in my life, is the serenity clause. And that's exactly kind of what you're saying is, knowing, what I have control and what should upset me that I can fix or find a solution. And some things just,
That's it.
sorry, next,
And that's it. Sorry, next, because you're saying that there's nothing I can do with that. But when we get sucked in or we're attaching ourselves to it or allowing ourselves to click in, that's us thinking we can do something with it.
And it's like, and I know Alan has said this numerous times, it's like responding to that email, like that and you just want to be, one up, or you want to better, just like walk away, like just, and just let them, and I'm terrible at, just like taking a breath and just like let it calm down. It'll play itself out. Just don't react. I'm reactionary, the same way, like I feel it, like I feel like the chemical, like that rage that goes into you,
Right.
And you feel like you're getting warmer, and you can't focus on things, and you just like chill out, like this. It's not gonna, you can't do anything about it. And I'm trying to teach that, you know what helped me also, and I think a lot of us are parents, is trying to teach it through my son.
Yes.
Like hearing it, like me say it, like, why don't I do this for myself? And sometimes, the old proverb that, those that can do and those that can't coach.
Yes.
So it's like coaching, like, and I'm learning, having a 19-year-old son who's starting in business and who, I'm doing all these things with, like seeing it through his eyes and seeing how like he reacts to it. It's helpful.
Right. Well, you're changing your lens. So it's like taking your glasses off and putting somebody else's on. What do they see? And that can be very helpful, because then you don't have to own all of the issues. You take it away from you and you put it on them. But it gives you a chance. It's like taking a breath. What are they seeing? What am I doing? But it's again, that's not mine is easy, because you're right. We're reactionary. So it's part of, if you can make it a part of your dialogue, there's no stop, take a breath. You're like about to explode. There's no breathing. I mean, obviously you're breathing, you'd be gone, but you know what I'm saying? So it's, what can you insert into that inner conversation? And I will tell you that I recommend to everybody that say it out loud. I don't care if you sound nuts. The first few times you do that, it will change your brain's way of processing. When you think things on the inside of your head quietly, your brain processes it one way. When it hears it aloud, it processes it differently. So you want to move it along faster, just even if it's just under your breath a little bit, say, that's not mine. And that's it.
But also just following it through, like I was waiting in a parking garage once, and I was getting upset because the clerk was just, and the woman turned to me, she goes, my father taught me a valuable lesson. They're on that side of the counter for a reason.
Right. That's exactly right.
And if you accept that this is an hourly employee doing the best that they can, which is not very good, and you talk about customer service, the average workforce out there is beyond pitiful in the United States.
Right. And people treat people badly. And so therefore, and then we expect so much,
Right.
And there's a lot to that discussion, clearly, but you're not wrong. But really, it's, your doctor is right. But your doctor's right for everybody in this room and everybody else everywhere. It's all of this stuff. And I'm going to run you through some other material quickly about this, but we've got all these other things, but stress can kill you for real. For real. So you have to really think, like, you said it, you can feel your chemicals changing. Well, that's what we're talking about. This isn't you're doing something to yourself and it's kind of like whatever. This is chemistry, hardcore chemistry, Randy.
Yeah, real fast. So in the financial services business, there was one of our coaches or mentors or a director of the Guardian Life Insurance. And one of his key things were, to tell advisors to clients, when you change the way you look at things, the way things look at you are changed. When you change the way you look at things,
right,
the way it looks, it's changed. And that's I think it's Wayne Dwyer.
Yeah,
There's a Wayne Dwyer quote. When you change the way you look at things, things change the way they look at you, something like that.
Right. But he was a big, his thing was intention and getting into that space. And it's all true. But when you're hearing these things all of the time, they lose their power. Now you know why that happens. So it tells you that you're not being irresponsible necessarily. It's that we all have different types of chemistry, right? Our genetic thumbprints are different, and then we share things in common. That's great. But there's all of this stuff going on. So many people would love to be able to control it, but they don't know how because they don't know what they've got. So now, right. So what he would say is correct. But the question is, well, how does that work? And why doesn't it work all the time? That also decreases your stress because now you know that it's not that you're an epic fail. It's that your brain is working and it's doing all kinds of things. And so now you can control that better. And you'll have more tolerance for the process, quite frankly, because now you get it, right? But it's absolutely the truth. When you change your perspective, things change, period. It's often the way it goes. And if it doesn't change, you're still looking at it differently. It feels differently because you've gone to different spaces in your head, very literally. I'm going to move on if that's okay. We're good so far? Thank you. Thanks, guys. Really, thanks. All right. The other thing that negative thinking does, okay, is it creates immune system suppression. Yeah, Stephen, that's really the truth. That is the truth. Thanks. Right. And now I'm smiling. Thank you. All right. So immune system suppression. All right. Your brain and body are always in survival mode. At the end of the day, that's the truth. All through the day. How do I survive? Get onto the subway. You're super, you could be staring at your phone, but you're still very alert to what's happening, you hope, around you. You understand your space. You understand when people get into your space and you have to manage that. Whatever it is, so your brain and body always in survival mode. All right. When that is being overused, your energy decreases. Nobody likes to have decreased energy. It doesn't feel good. When you have chronic stress, it weakens your immune system. When you get sick because you've been like so overdone, that's what that is. So the physiological response from stress, in part, is that you can change that. And I'm not saying go for a walk every day. I'm not saying anything in particular, except for watch that level. Just watch that level. You don't want to get sick, then don't move yourself into that space. Okay. Physical symptoms, anxiety. Anxiety, we hear so much about anxiety, right? So anxiety and stress are two separate things, all right? Stress is something that's solvable. You can problem solve stress. Anxiety, there's a sense of foreboding. It's just this thing floating around in your head. You don't really know what it is. And you can't really attach it to anything. Maybe you'll attach it to some stressors, but ultimately it's like this foreboding thing. That's anxiety. So these things are separate. When you have constant stress, okay, or you have anxiety, your fight or flight system is queued up, okay? And then your heart starts pounding and your blood is flowing. And that's not really a good thing because then again, your cortisol is kicked in, the levels are going up, your stress is continuing, you're getting more upset, maybe you get depressed, I don't know, maybe you're yelling, whatever it is. You want your heart to not be pounding. So the next time, and I don't mean exercise induced, but the next time you experience stress and you can feel your heart pounding, I want you to take a second and in your head, I want you to make it stop. It's unbelievable to experience. Unbelievable. Okay. Obviously, if you're having a heart attack, it may not be so easy and may be impossible. But if that blood is pumping and you're going, take a sec. I don't care what you do, as long as it's legal and you're not harming yourself or somebody else or committing an act of terrorism. I want you to slow it down. Just stop. You can picture it in your head if you want to. Just think, boom, 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 boom. Slow it down. Take a breath. Repace. And in a matter of like seconds, sometimes you can change that. Could take minutes, could take seconds, but you can actually do this to a significant degree. Chronic negativity. It further establishes similar neural systems. Okay, so again, you have, it's chronic. Somehow it became chronic. Look, this could also be chemical. You could have some issues that cause you to catastrophize, but even in that, some of it is learned after a while. So you want to break that cycle and say, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm done. And do whatever. I have ways to do this that it would take too much time to explain, but there are ways to stop yourself from staying inside of that negative space, even if it's chemically driven. All right. But let's go to anger and frustration, because this is the hot one. Anger and frustration, it's all negative. We're only talking about negativity. Those are negative, right? You can have a stroke. And I can't tell you how many studies point to, because I don't know the number, but there are lots of them. They point to the condition of the person when they had the stroke. Why? Their heart's pounding, their capillaries are open, things are flying. And the next thing you know, your body goes into overload and it has a stroke. You don't need to go there. Catch yourself and repace yourself, because you see, nobody can do that for you for the most part, but you. Even in therapy, okay, as a therapist, I can tell you, I can stand there, I can be on my head spinning in circles. If that person is not connected to the discussion, they're not going to make the change. So you can be the best anything, coach, therapist, whatever, I don't care what you are, director, whatever. If you can't connect, if you can't get that person to engage, it doesn't work. So ultimately, everybody, this has to do with you. Like, it's all about you. It's all about you. It really is. Right? In 2014, there was a study published in a journal called Stroke. That's literally its name. And what they found was this, and I'm going to get a little like heady for a sec, but just, I want you to see how real this is. What the research showed in that study was that negative emotions, okay, they activate something called the HPN axis. And what that is, it's hypothalamic. So we've talked about we've talked about like these parts like the hippocampus and all of these things, right? So your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system, all right, it's this axis. All these things are working together. It doesn't matter what they are, but they're all working together. When you have negative emotions, it automatically activates this area. It creates an endocrine shift. Okay, so now your endocrine system has shifted and it leads to risk factors. Yes, thanks very much, thanks. All right, so it leads to risk factors that can result in a stroke. All right. All right, so let me just wrap with this, okay? Thoughts, and I'll cover this next time. Thought suppression doesn't work. Like, I'm not thinking about that, I'm not thinking about that. That's not, now you know, your brain doesn't work like that. It just doesn't, okay? That's why that's, you know, don't think about the white elephant. Now that's all you think about. So suppression doesn't necessarily work for more than a little bit of time, all right? But habits. Kim, do I have a sec for habits? Because I know usually we do 15 minutes to close. Yes, no, no?
Well, it's 1:35.
Okay, all right.
So we're already over.
over
If
by
you
5
guys can
minutes.
stay, she can finish this last
Or what
thought.
I can do is I can let it go and come back next time, because I was going to recap on that anyway. So let me just say this. You have a lot of control. You don't realize often that you have it, but you need to understand what's happening in order to make a change. And now you've got the material. So just be careful. That's really what I'm saying to you. Know your stuff. Sorry for running over, and thank you for staying. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. This is all
Very-
really helpful and interesting
Very-
and yeah,
very interesting.
positive impact.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
All
Thanks
right.
so
Thank
much.
you.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Randy.
One
Be well,
question,
everybody.
Just one question.
What?
So what kind of doorstop did you get?
Oh my God, I found this stupid, ugly rubber one, the brown one.
There's different ones, because I used to be in the paint hardware business. So I can appreciate that they took you to the hardware section of the, pulls and cabinet hardware.
It's all about your lens. It's all about the way
right.
you see things,
That's
right?
right.
All right,
Okay.
thanks
Thanks,
again,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, great week.
Bye-bye.
Take care, bye-bye. See you next month.